So we are leaving BC. We are looking at the world. I'm glad to be here. I will try to link the world with BC. Okay. So the fisheries of the world, the marine fisheries, here they are. By sector, industrial fisheries in the upper left dominate, and artisanal fisheries, that is small-scale fisheries, small-scale commercial, make up about 20 million tons per year. And subsistence fisheries make about a few million tons, and also recreational fisheries are very important, but commercially especially. If you look at countries that catch lots of fish, it's mainly China and some Russia and Russian Federation, Japan, China, USA, and so on. And then in brown, lots of other countries. The black line in each of the 4 pictures is the official catch that is reported to the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. That is, each country, including Canada, sends every year statistics that are put together by the FAO, and this is the statistics that are used by the World Bank and consultants and investors to decide what is caught and where they should invest. And you see this is higher everywhere than the catch, because we have reconstructed the catch of many countries that do not report all they catch. And FAO doesn't get from Canada catch from the Arctic. The Inuit in Canada catch fish that is not reported to FAO. The sports fisheries along the coast of BC is not reported to FAO. Lots of artisanal catches are not reported to FAO, and generally most countries do not report the catch made by small boats. So the catch is actually the official catch, which is about 90 million tons a year. You can see this flat black line is lower than the real catch of the world, which is about 110, 120 million. And you can see that while it is flat officially, it shows a decline in real catch since 96. 96 was the world's peak catch. We are doing something similar now, reconstruction for freshwater fisheries, and the difference between the official catch, the reported to FAO, and the real catch is much, much bigger. For example, the freshwater fisheries of Canada, about 10% is reported to FAO, and the rest is recreational catch and indigenous catch that is not reported. So the official data are not right. Now, if you look at the lower right, you see in blue the herring, and the dark blue is the anchovy of Peru, and the blue is Alaska pollock and so on. And I should have done it, but I have not. I should have presented as a group the herring and the relative. They make about 20% of the catch of the world. And the herring and the relative are, as mentioned here, the base of the food web in all ecosystems. So you've seen the catch are slightly decreasing, and the effort, the fishing effort, as measured in a cumulative power of all engines in the fleet, is increasing like crazy. Mainly in Asia, driven mainly by the monster fleet that China has, and in Europe as well. The North America and the Americas and Oceania and so on, they have fleet that can be negligible, that are negligible in contrast. So that you have a catch that is declining, and you have a fishing effort that is rapidly increasing. What does it mean? That means that the fish that are in the water are getting less and less. That's the catch per effort is declining very rapidly. And the fleet, for example, the big distant water fleet of Asian countries, China, South Korea, Taiwan, if it's a country, and so on, they are essentially also the Spanish fleet, the French fleet, they are fishing for subsidies. They are not fishing for fish because they are not really making money because they are fishing, the stocks are low, and they could not exist without subsidies, so they fish for subsidies. So if the plankton is the phytoplankton, you can see it as a grass of the ocean, right? And the antelope, the fish are the antelope that graze that stuff. Now, you can map the plankton of the world, and you can re-express the catch in terms of plankton that is necessary to generate that catch. Okay, that is not very complicated. We have proposed this concept of primary production required in 95 in Nature, and this is a representation of the plankton that was necessary, or the proportion of the plankton that is there for maintaining the fisheries in 1950. And you see that there is some yellow, about 10% or so, yellow and red around Europe and New England and around Japan. But there were fisheries all over the place at the time, but they had no impact that was visible in terms of primary production. And that's where we are now. We have an impact on the ocean that is similar to the impact on land in terms of primary production that is used. And this impact has spread over time because the local fleet in various industrialist countries have depleted the fish that they had in front of the coast, and then they have gone into distant water fleet. Canada doesn't have distant water fleet, incidentally, and it's Canada that was plundered by distant water fleet from elsewhere. So that is the Antarctica is left as a place where we are going to have a big impact, and it's going to be invaded very soon to feed, using krill, to feed the aquaculture of salmon, especially salmon by the Norwegian and other fish in China. Between them, they eat up all the fish meal. And much of the fish meal in the world is generated by sardine and anchovies, which are the food of people. And they are not only the food for indigenous people here in Canada, they are the food from West Africa, in Asia. They are basic food. And right now, right under our nose, it is this food for people is transferred into fish meal. So 10 years ago, you could go into West Africa and you see market women transforming sardine and anchovies and so on, making them dry. We saw the lady stripping a herring and making it available for eating. That was also done in West Africa, except that they were drying. And this stuff was then packed and sent inland into landscape where people have nothing but carbs to eat. No vegetable, no meat, no vegetable, no nothing. And now this is gone because essentially around the West African coast, for example, hundreds of plants have been initiated that transform this fish into fish meal. So food for people have been taken out of their mouth and turned into fish meal that goes to Norway and China and shows up as farm salmon. This is a big, big issue. So you can magnify the problems that you see here, that we have heard about this morning, into 1,000, and you have the global scale of the problem happening. So this fishing has modified ecosystem very much, and the trophic level is a technical term that says how high in the food chain you are. So if you are a killer whale, you are way up 5, and a salmon would be around 4, and a sardine would be around 2 to 3, and the zooplankton is 2. And we fished before at about 3.5, lots of sardine and lots of big fish, and this decline. This is global, and so we have to go offshore because we have depleted the fish that is inshore, and then halfway offshore there are still fish that are low trophic level. They are fished, the high trophic level are fished, and the trophic level go down. Offshore there is no low trophic level fish, tuna, and that are exploited right now, and the trophic level of the fishery is very high. So that is the story of fishing worldwide. And the phenomenon is called fishing downwind food web, and it's illustrated by this graph. Basically, in modern history, every time you acquire the capacity of catching all the fish, you start with catching them big, and then you catch them smaller and smaller, and then you end up catching the sardine and the herrings and turning them into fish meal, which then produce big tuna that you can export to the US. Tuna also. Tuna can be fed with sardine and fish meal and pellets and so on, and you have aquaculture, but this form of aquaculture actually doesn't produce fish, it consumes fish, right? Because you, for example, for salmon, you need 4 kilo of sardine or anchovies to produce 1 kilo of salmon. So the more aquaculture you have, the less fish you have for people to eat. The fisheries, this development of fisheries went along with the extermination of marine mammals globally. It started obviously with whaling big time, and in the 60s, 50s, there was, for example, the extermination of all whales in the North Pacific, and the whales are giving, or the marine mammal as a whole, there are some that are recovering, and so you see this little tail going up again. For birds, it's completely different. Birds are not showing any sign. That is a global analysis of recovering. They are declining because their food is taken away. We're talking about herring again. We seabirds, and also because they are caught as bycatch in the fishery. They try to get the bait, and they get dragged down and drowned and so on. There are various forms of fishing that are extremely murderous for the birds. And so the birds, seabirds, are going down and down. That is global also. So we have all these problems, but are these unsolvable problems? Well, we know. The big fisheries, as I mentioned, is subsidized. It would not, the big international distant water fleet would not exist without massive subsidization. And it has been up to now impossible to get the World Trade Organization to stop the subsidies of the subsidization of big fleet. The major obstacle, at least the one that says so, are India and Brazil, But behind this are European countries and China. They also don't want subsidy. But the one that say we will continue to subsidize is India. It is very easy. It is actually straightforward to rebuild stocks. All you have to do is accept that it needs rebuilding, and then you set quota that are low enough for the stock to rebuild. Nature is like that, rewarding. And paradoxically, the only country in the world that has a reasonable law, or at least up to now, is the US. They have the Magnuson-Stevens Act. From the moment scientists come up with this stock is overfished, the government has 10 years to rebuild them to reasonable level. And you can sue the government if they don't do that, and you have 10 years to do it. And the minister never intervenes with setting the quota. Whereas in Canada, the law that was recently passed, the Fisheries Act, which emphasized rebuilding, allows the minister to intervene. And the minister obviously comes up with quota that are too high. And in the case of cod, which Canada has devastated, in '92 the cod fishery had a moratorium. It now, instead of catching 200,000 tons, as was done from 1500 to 1950, about 200,000 tons per year, from biomass of about 2 million tons. In Canada, we have 50,000 tons around in the water, and the quota is half of it. This is much too high, and it prevents the stock from ever recovering. This is, you see, as a kid, I admired Canadian hockey in Switzerland, and Canadian, later, when I studied in Germany, Canadian research, fisheries research, was the top of the world. It was the place that was the best in the world. And then this disaster with cods happened, and you know that it was just a facade. It wasn't true that Canada was intervening. It's such that it has so many resources, so much fish, that it was not possible to destroy it. But after a while, it became possible. So you can rebuild the stock. And marine reserves do work. They do rebuild stocks, except that if they are not protective, then they don't work. And in Europe, for example, we have marine protected areas, a system of marine protected areas that allows trawling. And we have in Europe marine protected area that are, I'm both Canadian and French, so when I say we, it can change. We have marine protected areas that are not protected, and there is more trawling than outside of marine protected areas. So they are zone of death. They are killing zones, the marine protected area. It can happen. So how about small-scale fisheries? I don't have lots of pictures about it, but the key point is that internationally, the various countries they all have non-functional entities like DFO. DFO, France is worse, and Germany has one also like DFO, and Russia also. That it's the misery that you talked about, that DFO doesn't do that. Well, that is all over the place. The DFOs are like that. And they don't report, they underreport the catch by small-scale fisheries, and the catch of indigenous fisheries is never reported in no country, because the Maoris in New Zealand and also catch, and this is underreported. And because the catch of small-scale fisheries is underreported or not reported, then you can say small-scale fisheries don't need to manage them. or because they are small. This is an infernal circle you cannot get out of. And the only way you can get out of it is showing that the small-scale fisheries are not small, but lots of work. You can, and we have, but it's lots of work. And so the knowledge that we mentioned, that was mentioned this morning, that people have small-scale fisheries, indigenous or not, that something is wrong, is not taken into account. For example, in Newfoundland, the fishers that didn't have a wide range, that could not follow the cod, they could see that the cod was disappearing from along the coast. The trawlers went to where the cod was. So they catch per effort, catch per fishing day or catch per hour or so, remain high. And you know what? This is the first thing that you teach in fishery science, to have a catch per effort that covers a wide range, not a fleet that moves. And this is an elementary error. And this elementary error was noted by several scientists. They were asked to leave, and they ended up in Dalhousie University. And the cod collapse is because of bad work, bad science. Yeah. So I will finish with this. There is a concept that I don't hear that is actually, it's Greek, okay, but it is good. It is a good concept to know. That's philopatry. Philopatry is the love of homeland, you could say, but actually the tendency for animals to return to where they hatched or to where they were born. And we know that for salmon, they return to the rivers, and they return, turtles do that also. But actually, what is not appreciated is that all animals, virtually all of them, do that. And it's also true for herring. And how do we know that? First of all, we know that from logic. A fish could not evaluate different places and then return to the place that is best. They have to make a quick decision. And the quickest decision, that is also a reasonable one, is that if I am alive, having been born in that place, and I'm alive and ready to spawn, that was a good place. So I go back to the place where I was hatched, I was born. Philopatry, it's called. And herrings are philopatric, and that we know now that since the concept was proposed, because we can not only find that the fish has the gene of its species, but we can identify the parents of a fish, the parents, the two, male and female. And this is now done on a grand scale, and all fish were turned out who are investigated, which I've investigated, are turning to be philopatric. They go back to the very bay where they were hatched or where they were born. Now, DFO doesn't accept that. The DFO says that it is just stories, that what the elders say, that spawning each bay in Georgia Strait and the Salish Sea had its own stock, its own stocklets. The word is from UK, where the concept, where they also had lots of stocklets around the British Isles that were wiped out by the first industrial boats. And these stocklets, and they are philopatric groups that spawn at a certain place. They join the big stock that is common, but they go back to their place to spawn. Salmon do that. They join the fellow from other runs, but they spawn in their own rivers. They all do this, and therefore ignoring the stocklets is wrong science. And obviously then you don't need to rebuild them because you pretend they never existed. And that's the situation you're in. And I don't have the time to elaborate on the reason that, but it's not science anyway. This is pure politics. And that pretends to be science. Thank you very much.